Chuck Etheridge here. In week 12, can you believe it, of English 4322. Before I go on, let me just take a moment and tell you all how proud I am of the people in this class. You're doing hard work. You're doing each week a kind of writing that we haven't done before. You're trying it, you're revising it, you're doing well. And I'm aware of the challenges of what I'm asking you to do, and I am every week pleased and delighted and honored at the way that you all meet the challenges. I just want to take a moment to say that. The topic this week is grant writing. Now, I teach an entire class in grant writing, which is offered next semester, and you all should take if you have time for it. Seriously. But I don't think it's a realistic thing for you to do a complete grant application in a week. It's just not. But I think a manageable task is to do a letter of intent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk briefly about the letter of intent, and I'm going to go back and give you kind of an overview of the entire grant writing process, just so you have the information. Now, a letter of intent is really the grant writ small. Some grant agencies ask for a letter of intent, and basically you describe the project. This is what you want to do. This is why you want to do it. This is why it's important. This is why this grant fits with the criteria that the grant has, what they ask for the grant to do, and it fits with that particular funding agency, and you give them a realistic budget. And the way the letter of intent process works is you write this up, you send it in, and they review it, and then they cut most of the applications. And the ones that they think they might be interested in funding, they say send us a full application. Now, asking for a full application doesn't mean your grant application is going to get funded necessarily, but it weeds out the ones that they're really not interested in. So you have a much better chance of getting a grant if you send off a letter of application and then they request a full proposal as well. And that's what we're going to be doing this week. We're going to write a letter of intent that includes a realistic budget. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more. But overall, the way the grant writing process works is you got to realize that grants are not actually about money. I know that sounds odd, but grants are about action, achieving a change in your community or a growth in your agency as well. So basically, what you need to do is you need to have things that you are interested in doing if you work for a nonprofit. We work with these clients, but we could do a better job if we were able to offer this service. Or I've noticed over time that all of our clients have this particular need. This is what we could do to help them out. And I'll give you a couple of specific examples. For example, about several years ago, actually the first student-written grant that we did at TAMUCC, the food bank said, we are wasting all of this non-perishable food, meaning fruits and vegetables, meat and cheese, because we don't have enough refrigerator space for it. If we could get another big room-size refrigerator unit for the food bank, then we could get more food and meats in. We could store it, we could distribute it to more clients, so we could reach more people and we could provide more healthy food to the clients we already serve. So they had known this for a long time, and then a particular grant opportunity came up, and we wrote the grant and got it. $47,000, kind of work you actually do in the grant writing class, by the way. But my point is you need to have things that you know that you need to be doing. You should not say, oh, there's a grant for $5 million, what do we have to do to get it? You should have a continuous sense of what your agency needs to do, and then as these funding opportunities come up, you say, hey, do we fit this? Hey, I think we do. So you identify, you have these projects, they always need to be things that need to be funded, things that you need to be doing. Then you identify these funding opportunities, and then you create what I call a spiel, which is basically this agency needs this amount of money from this funding service to do this. The Food Bank of Corpus Christi needs $47,000 to construct, from the Kraft agency anyway, to construct an additional room size refrigerator unit so we can increase the nutritional content of the food we give our clients by adding more meat and fruit and vegetables. So you saw what I did. We need to do this for this reason for these people. And it's a very specific, very action-oriented kind of thing. And that's the kind of things that funding agencies respond to. They fund programs. They fund positive change in the community that you serve. That's why you need the money. It's not, oh, we need $10 million or $5,000, whatever as well. So basically what you do is you have these projects you need to work on. You identify the funding criteria of that particular program or granting agency. You create your spiel, and then you call them. You either email them, write them, or contact them and say, hi, this is, Joe Smith. This is Rashawn Black from Volunteer Grant Writer on behalf working with Coastal Bend's AIDS organization, something like that. And anyway, and we need to do this amount of money to do this for this purpose. Is this the kind of project that your agency might fund? And you're going to get one of three answers, and they're all good. The first answer is going to be no. And although a no might not sound good, you find out right away that you do not have a chance to get that grant, so you don't waste the 6 to 8 weeks of your life writing a grant you don't have a chance of getting. You might get told, no, but have you contacted this other funding agency? Because the funding world is a pretty small world. And about half the grants I have gotten have been from recommendations from somebody I talked to who didn't fund me, but they knew someone who might. And the third one is, yeah, that's kind of what we're looking for. Send the project in. There's no downside to doing this. And by the way, just as an aside, one of the things that I do, you can probably tell from this class, is I interview a lot of people who work in the nonprofit world. And the number one bit of advice they give me about grant writing is that contacting the funding agency. So it's the best thing you can do for your project, because then they'll give you tips and trades, make sure you do this, make sure you do this. So you contact the funding agency. So you've got your criteria, you've got your spiel, you contact the funding agency, and then you think you're going to do this grant, then you get the funding criteria and you read them thoroughly. I tell people read it like it's the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, every love letter you've gotten from the person you're most romantically infatuated with in your life. But read them often, thoroughly, and with feelings, and look for exactly what they want. And every grant is different, but they will tell you very specifically what they want, what the criteria are. Sometimes they will tell you how many pages it should be. They'll tell you the font size. They'll tell you how it should be single or double spaced. They'll tell you which font to use, all kinds of information that they're going to give you. And that's your homework, and you want to do exactly what they say. And along the way, you're going to construct a budget, because it's dollars. You need to find out what that grant will fund, and you need to construct a budget that's realistic. You don't want a Cadillac, a luxury car where you get everything you've ever wanted for your agency, and treat this funding agency like it's Santa Claus, because they'll recognize fluff. But you also don't want to underpromise. You don't want to say, hey, we can do this. We got know-how attitude. We can do a $50,000 job for only $20,000. Because a grant is a contract. It's a legal contract. And if you promise to do a $50,000 job for $20,000, there's a good chance you'll get funded, and then you will be legally on the hook, contractually obligated to do what you say you're going to do, even though the grant does not give you the resources to do it. And you don't go back and say, hey, we screwed up, can we have more money? Doesn't work that way. So you want to, a kind of a bare bones, a decent but realistic amount of what it's going to take to do that. So you write your grant, and the components or elements of that grant are going to vary depending on what those criteria are for that agency. You're going to construct a realistic budget, and then you will have lots of stuff you got to get together, and it's going to depend on every grant what they want. They might want a copy of the letter. It's called your 501c3 letter. The letter from the IRS that proves you're really a nonprofit. They might want a list of your board of trustees. They might want a list of bylaws. They'll want lots of different information. And it can take a really long time to put this together. It might seem very obvious, like, oh, well, we've got all this stuff together, but sometimes funding agencies will ask for things that are different. Like one agency I worked with asked for a list of board of trustees. They asked if the board of trustees was representative of the population that they serve. And if not, what are the plans to make the board change so it more closely mirrors the population that the agency serves? So that's a lot of information. Those aren't things that you just pull out of the file. So it can take as long to pull the stuff together as it does to write the grant. So if you've got a team, maybe one person do the budget, one person do the grant, one person do the stuff. Then you pull everything together, preferably 2 weeks in advance, maybe a week in advance, no later than that, and then you submit it. Some grant applications are physical. You have to put everything together in a particular format, in a particular way. If you do that, you write a cover letter, which basically it's a special animal, but it's somewhat like the letter of intent. But you write a cover letter, then you have all your grant materials together, organized neatly. You don't want to waste money on fancy binders and things like that, because but you don't want to look lazy or cheesy like a Crayola project or something like that either. You want to look well organized, professionally, and smart with your resources. And if they ask for 10 copies, you send 10 copies. If they ask for Times New Roman font, it better all be in Times New Roman font. And then you send it. Now, remember, submission deadlines are real. So if a grant is due on Friday, November 15th at 5 p.m. in Washington, it's due Friday, November 15th at 5 p.m. in Washington, there in that office. And bear in mind, that means 3 p.m. on Friday. So if it's a physical submission, you need to send it out well in advance. And newsflash, in case you don't know this, overnight mail out of Corpus Christi doesn't work. If you ever try to send anything overnight out of Corpus Christi, they will take your money and they will make you sign a waiver that if you read it says, we know it's not going to get there overnight, but we're going to take your money anyway. But we're warning you that it's not. There's a good chance it won't get there overnight as well. So if you've got to physically send something, several days of lead time, like send it off Monday if it's got to be there by Friday. Go ahead and pay the express air. If it's got to be in Austin, it wasn't myself doing it. It wasn't my grant, but helping an agency. I've actually driven a grant to Austin and physically taken it to the building. And hey, it's here. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I need a receipt showing me it got there on time as well. If it's an electronic submission, and more submissions are electronic, do not make the mistake of thinking that submitting a grant electronically is instant thing, like attaching a letter to an email or something like that, because you have to sign up for that grant agency's submission program. You often have to fill out a bunch of certifications and applications to support the grant that can take days to fill out as well. And sometimes the software just doesn't work right. And granting agencies will not grant you a deadline because their software breaks down, by the way. They'll say, well, where is it working on Friday? Well, if you waited till Friday to submit it and it didn't get in, sorry, but it's not really our problem as well. So if it's electronic, you still need to plan on submitting, if at all possible, several days before the grant deadline as well. So, and then you wait, and hopefully you get good news, and then you get money, and then you can do what you wanted, and then you do the thank you process and those other things, which is something that you learned about in grant writing. But anyway, that's an overview of the grant writing process this week. Letter of intent will be explained more fully in the reading, and good luck. I do need to say one thing. This is a big wah kind of thing. Do not really submit these grants. Almost every organization has one person who has the authority to submit grants and basically to sign contracts for the organization. At TAMUCC, it's not President Quintanilla, believe it or not. There's one person who goes through the specific training so they can legally authorize the organization to sign grants and thus financially obligate them to do things. So I have been sending grants out for well, it's really embarrassing. I won't say that number out loud, but I have been sending grants out since well before there were electronic submissions. I'll put that as well. And I've never actually sent a grant out under my own name, like, oh, this is me. It's always been on behalf of an organization, on behalf of a university, on behalf of a nonprofit, on behalf of a group of concerned citizens. And so I write the letter of intent, and it's with the CEO's name or something like that as well. But so you do not have the authority to submit a grant, not that you would, but just so you know that as well, you need to be very careful, because sometimes when I'm doing the grant writing process, the university will get very panicked. Oh, students are going to write grants and send them out. No, they are writing grants for other agencies, and those agencies are going to submit them. That may not sound like a big deal, but it actually is. Anyway, this week, grant writing and finishing up the fundraising process. Thank you, bravo, and kudos to you all. We'll see you. Bye-bye.